2024 has a ton of incredible new PC games to play. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on Gameranx, the top 50 new PC games of 2024. Starting off with number 50, it's Stalker 2 Heart of Chernobyl. Now, this is a first-person shooter. It brings in survival horror, some RPG elements. If you're familiar with the original, you know exactly what it is, except this one builds on what they did in the original, which had a little bit more linear of a structure and gives us a big ol' open world. The zone is a great place to make an open world in. It's a radioactive wasteland teeming with anomalies and mutants. Obviously, the graphics are significantly better than Stalker 1. The original came out in 2007, and Stalker 2 Heart of Chernobyl is coming September 5th, and I couldn't be more excited to play it. And number 49 is Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater, a remake that tells us it's going to be incredibly faithful and even uses the original voice cast and recordings from the original game, which I think is the exact right way to go. The performances in the original are fantastic. Why not have them? That's cool. It's also obviously a huge update in terms of graphics, probably layouts, probably gameplay, but it's apparently a faithful retelling of the original game, and I can't wait to play it. We don't have a release date, but it is coming this year. I would imagine November, December. That seems like a busy time of the year release if I've ever seen one, so stay tuned. At number 48, it's Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. Kind of crazy that, unlike its predecessors, the return to the beloved franchise is more of a platformer and puzzler than most of these games have been for quite a while. In a lot of ways, it feels like a kind of follow-up to the more original Prince of Persia type of game, except it brings in a lot more Metroidvania type stuff. You have the non-linear kind of 2D equivalent of open world exploration. It's got some pretty sweet movement, and it's got that kind of parkour style movement with pretty acrobatic combat. I think it's a pretty darn fun game. It's already out. Highly recommend picking it up. And number 47 is Senua's Saga Hellblade 2, the sequel to the critically acclaimed original game. It's a dark fantasy action adventure that follows up on everything we learned about Senua, the Celtic warrior, in the first game. Basically, it promises to expand pretty largely on what we saw in the first game. Of course, it was very successful. It made the studio, which was very small, a ton of money. And if you remember, the first game did a really good job of exploring themes of mental illness and resilience and overcoming things despite big odds. It was a really good game. And it'll be exciting to play Senua's Saga Hellblade 2 when it comes out May 21st. At number 46, Dune Awakening is going to be an open-world survival MMO, so you can kind of assume that you're going to see resource management and base building and a whole lot of Dune. Obviously, it takes place on the harsh deserts of Arrakis. You got big old sandworms, you got a ton of sandstorms, rival factions vying for control of that sweet, sweet spice, the stuff necessary to travel at hyperspeeds. There is not a release date yet for Dune Awakening, but it is said to be coming out in 2024, so developments here will be very interesting to see. And number 45 is Crimson Desert, an open-world action-adventure game blending elements of medieval history and fantasy, set on the continent of Pywell and focusing on the story of somebody named Macduff, a mercenary leader, attempting to reclaim his land and protect his people. It's basically, in some ways, a bit of a follow-up to Black Desert Online. However, it's a single-player focused experience with an emphasis on storytelling and character development. That's obviously a big difference from Black Desert Online, but it was originally developed as a follow-up directly to Black Desert Online. It does look like there's going to be some pretty cool combat, both on foot and on mount, and a lot of different activities from hunting to trading. We don't have a release date, but 2024 is allegedly when we'll see it, so we'll keep you in the loop. And number 44 is Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree, the highly anticipated expansion to the critically acclaimed and beloved Elden Ring. New chapter in the game's saga, which is going to take us all on a journey beyond the lands between. So we're going to see a lot of new territory and obviously a lot of fresh lore. Elden Ring has an intricate mythology to it, and obviously, as an expansion, this will expand on that. But we also expect to see new enemies, bosses, characters, stories, all sorts of challenges. Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree is landing on June 20th, so keep your eyes peeled. At number 43 is Hades 2, the sequel to the critically acclaimed roguelike dungeon crawler. This game is going to be giving us a bit of a fresh twist on the formula. This time around, we are the immortal princess of the underworld taking on our own journey. Totally different. New gods, new enemies, new environments. And, as with the first, probably expanded to at least some extent, is the dynamic story elements. I'm excited. Obviously, this game has a really cool art style. Supergiant Games has never led us astray in the past, so I'm excited. We don't have a release date, but it's coming this year, so big hell yeah to Hades 2. At number 42 is The First Descendant, a free-to-play, third-person co-op action RPG set in a fantasy world where you, as a descendant with unique abilities and powers, has to defend your world from an alien threat. This is a really pretty-looking game. It's running on Unreal Engine 5. It's got PvE, PvP, and honestly, action RPGs aren't typically co-op, so I think that's an interesting spin on the formula. We don't have a release date for The First Descendant, but it is coming this year. Stay tuned. At number 41 is Star Wars Outlaws, an upcoming action-adventure game. The first from Ubisoft, maybe not the last, because it's definitely an intriguing title. In a lot of ways, looks kind of like 1313 was supposed to look, except for it's not set on Coruscant. It's going to be across various planets. In a lot of ways, it reminds me of Uncharted. There's stealth, exploration, combat, and of course, narrative. I'm excited for it. It looks really cool. I hope it delivers because it's one of those games where I look at it and I'm like, this would be great. I really want to play it. But if it turns out not to be good, it's going to be a real big flop. I have high expectations, though, so I'm excited to play Star Wars Outlaws. Again, no release date. Stay tuned. It is coming this year, though. At number 40 is Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, an action-adventure game set in the 1930s. What could very easily be a Tomb Raider or an Uncharted-style game is actually not. It's a first-person game, very interesting looking, very different. First-person whipping good. Also, lots of intricate puzzles, apparently. I think very interesting blend of exploration, storytelling, and, of course, cinematic crap, because it's Indiana Jones. Again, no release date, so you're going to have to wait on that, but I have a feeling it's going to be worth it. It is landing this year. Hopefully the circle is very great. At number 39 is Grand Blue Fantasy Relink, an action RPG that expands on the Grand Blue Fantasy universe from free-to-play, web-based thing into console gaming. This is a much more serious entry as far as I'm concerned. You got real-time combat, you got beautiful graphics, stuff you just haven't seen from what is, I mean, for what it is, a pretty cool thing. Platinum Games had some hand in the development earlier on. Yasuyuki Kaiji, who works for Platinum Games, remained the director even after Platinum Games stopped working on the game as a company. So, I mean, that input is still there, in my opinion. It's definitely an interesting game. Definitely worth checking out. Highly recommend it. I haven't beaten it yet, but I do enjoy it. Definitely worth your time if you like a good JRPG / action RPG. It's kind of both in certain ways. At number 38 is the Silent Hill 2 remake, a highly anticipated reimagining of the classic survival horror game. This remake by Bloober Team aims to keep the essence of the original but update it in the same way Resident Evil has been updated. The older games have turned into the remakes, which are very good games. As such, you're going to be stepping into the shoes of James Sunderland. You're going to be looking for your deceased wife, and you're going to uncover a lot of dark secrets, unsettling secrets. We don't have a release date on this, but it's highly anticipated. I know that there's a lot of varied opinions, but this is such a beloved game, and frankly, a lot of what it seems like they're trying to do is the right stuff, in my opinion. I'm going to be positive about it until there's a reason not to be. I haven't seen anything that makes me go, oh, well, they're definitely screwing this up. So I'm looking forward to finding out when it comes out so I can play it. It is coming this year, so keep your eyes peeled. And number 37 is Ara History Untold, a turn-based strategy game that brings us grand strategy, historical simulation, mixes it up and gives us something that's hopefully going to be interesting and new. You're going to be making decisions that alter the course of human civilization, basically creating your own version of human history. You got all of the landmark strategy stuff, diplomacy, research of technology, empire building, etc. It looks really cool. It's landing sometime this year, allegedly fall, so we'll let you know when there's a firmer release date for Ara History Untold. And number 36 is Lost Soul Aside, an action RPG, clearly inspired by both Final Fantasy and Devil May Cry. I think particularly inspired by Final Fantasy 15. I think it's reasonable to assume we're going to see more Final Fantasy-style games with Devil May Cry-style fighting, because as much controversy as Final Fantasy 16 kicked up, it's a pretty damn good game, honestly. And I think that it's going to be looked back on more fondly than it was received initially by a lot of people. Lost Soul aside, it's not Game of Thrones Final Fantasy. It's definitely Final Fantasy 15 Final Fantasy, whatever the hell you want to call that. I'm looking forward to it, personally. If they pull it off, I think it's a good idea. There is no release date yet, but Lost Soul Aside is supposed to come in 2024. And number 35 is Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2, the long-awaited sequel to the action-packed third-person shooter, building on the foundation of its predecessor, obviously enhanced graphics. It's been a while. And allegedly a deeper narrative. Honestly, it's Warhammer 40k Space Marine. It's another one of those. It's a sequel to a game that came out in 2011, and there's a whole lot of stuff that is probably going to be added to it, knowing that. But with the 2011 game as a foundation, I think pretty strong possibilities here. Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2 is landing on September 9th. And number 34 is Tekken 8. As the bird that did the before you buy on this game, definite thumbs up here. Tekken 8 continues the saga of the Mishima clan. It's got insane graphics. And it brings the combat to another new level. I would highly recommend watching the before you buy we did of this. There's way too much to talk about in like a 30-second slot, but it is a game that vastly deserves the praise and attention that Tekken 7 maybe didn't completely deserve and kind of left people wanting, you know? Tekken 8 is fantastic. I love Tekken 8. Buy it, play it. That simple. At number 33, Manor Lords is an upcoming strategy game. One of those combos of the city building, the resource management, and the tactical warfare types. Of course, medieval, Manor Lords. It's set in a feudal setting. So, what sets it apart, I think, is the way that it emphasizes organic growth based on the player's decisions and the landscape. There's also these very large-scale battles that look pretty damn cool in terms of not only spectacle, but strategic planning, troop management, all the depth to the gameplay. It looks like a really good game. Manor Lords is landing on April 26th. And number 32 is Hollow Knight Silksong, a highly anticipated sequel to the critically acclaimed Hollow Knight, an action-adventure side-scrolling Metroidvania. Puts you in some different shoes. Hornet, the princess protector of Hollow Nest, has to explore a completely new kingdom, and along with that, she has different mechanics, new acrobatic abilities, and in every way, it looks like a big expansion on what Hollow Knight did. I'm excited to play Silksong. It doesn't have a release date, but it's landing sometime in 2024. And number 31 is Persona 3 Reload, another game your favorite game bird did the before you buy for. Definitely recommend watching that video. Again, this is a pretty big game. It is, in terms of the last three numbered entries of Persona, not the most expansive, but that doesn't mean you're not going to be spending tens of hours with it. This is essentially the game that established the formula, followed pretty faithfully by Persona 4 and 5. It's updated in terms of visuals and some mechanics to match along with Persona 5 a little bit more, and I really think it benefits from it. Persona 3 Reload is very, very good. Probably the best way you have to experience Persona 3 currently. I do have some hope that they add in some of the content they didn't include, but all of that is true notwithstanding. Definitely pick this one up. And number 30 is Dragon Age Dreadwolf, the next chapter in the Dragon Age series. I mean, this is a great BioWare RPG series. We're following the story of Solus, the enigmatic Dreadwolf, and of course, that means deep storytelling, character study, and obviously strategic combat. Dragon Age has never been one to hold back on the political intrigue. I expect that to be back. We don't have a release date for it yet, but it is coming 2024. I mean, this is going to be huge. At number 29 is Arc 2, the sequel to the popular survival game Ark Survival Evolved. Basically, the intent is to take Survival Evolved and evolve it, bringing the whole survival with dinosaurs and other ancient creatures and stuff like that, allegedly to new heights. We'll see. I think it's going to be a cool game. Got vastly improved graphics, more dynamic ecosystems, more enhanced AI, etc., etc. All the types of stuff you would expect. We don't have a release date, but Ark 2 is going to land sometime this year. We'll let you know as soon as we know more. And number 28 is Test Drive Unlimited Solar Crown, bringing the franchise back, throwing down a pretty cool open world, 1-to-1 scale replica of Hong Kong Island. In terms of freedom and exploration, they're promising unparalleled, but in terms of, Test Drive Unlimited is a good series. Supposedly the point of this is immersing yourself in car culture through this Solar Crown competition. We don't have an exact date for it, but it is coming this year. Look out. And number 27 is Enshrouded, a survival game that is currently in early access. It's a co-op survival action RPG set in a kind of mysterious and eerie setting with exploration and puzzle solving as its focus. It's a game that's been pretty damn well received, got really good visuals, really good sound design, very positive reviews with, I think, good reason to assume you'll have a good time with it if it sounds good. It's pretty much delivered on what it sets out to do. I would say go give it a shot. I've had some fun with it. And number 26 is Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, a series that, with its last entry, went full JRPG. This is continuing that lineage. Wow, is this a quirky game? And not in like it's so quirky. I mean, like, these are legitimately bizarre and strange games that are extremely engaging, massively fun. It's interesting because it's mostly a JRPG, but there's elements of that beat-em-up style combat that are brought back in different contexts. If you like weird JRPGs, this is the best place to go for that. Also, if you just enjoy the Yakuza series, I think everything that makes Yakuza good is also still here. I had a hell of a lot of fun with Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. Again, I'm pretty sure I did the before you buy on this one, so go back and watch that for more thoughts. I had a hell of a time with this game. I think you will too. And number 25 is Hyper Light Breaker, which I'm going to say what Hyper Light Drifter is to Legend of Zelda Link to the Past. Hyper Light Breaker looks very much like it is to Breath of the Wild. It looks very much like it takes exactly what I described and made it very oriented towards roguelike stuff. You got biomes, random generation. Some of the traversal stuff you'll recognize from Solar Ash. They actually built this game on top of Solar Ash. But it also looks very reminiscent in terms of the combat and movement of Hyper Light Drifter. I'm quite excited about it. I love Solar Ash and Hyper Light Drifter. Big into those games. We don't know when this is coming out, but it is coming this year. We'll keep you in the loop. And number 24 is the Gothic 1 remake. The original Gothic is getting a remake. I mean, this game came out in 2001. It's a classic action RPG. It's also like jank central and something that remakes the essence of the original, giving us better graphics, a more accessible user interface, and perhaps less jank. Honestly, like, I say that kind of hesitantly because the jank is part of what makes Gothic Gothic. I mean, I'm kind of excited to see a remake to Gothic. Like, I really like Piranha Bytes games, but I also have my own beef with them. There's aspects of Piranha Bytes games I just do not like, but there's a lot of aspects of them that I do. So I'm interested just in seeing what a 2024 Gothic even is, honestly. We don't have a release date, but it's coming this year, so stay tuned. At number 23 is Phantom Blade Zero, an action RPG. A little bit faster paced than a Souls-like might typically be, so I'm not necessarily putting it in that category. It is a bleak-looking game with some very interesting artistic ideas. It's a semi-open world game, not a full-on open world game. You're going to have some pretty linear stuff in it and some semi-open stuff, maybe sort of Uncharted 4-like. I don't know. It's an interesting looking one. I don't want to say it defies categorization because, I mean, look at it. You know what this game is from this footage. Or at least you know as much as I know. We know what we're looking at. It looks fun. Unfortunately, we don't have a release date, so we can't play it. But it is coming this year. At number 22 is Path of Exile 2, a sequel to the popular action RPG. This looks like they are attempting to set a grittier, darker, improved idea set 20 years after the events of the first game, revamped skill system, more customization and flexibility in character building, new classes, new equipment, new challenges, new. Path of Exile was a great game. I am absolutely looking forward to a sequel to it. It's free to play, it's multiplayer, it's basically Diablo but not Blizzard. So, I mean, there's good reasons to play it, in my opinion. I mean, that's not really fair to the original Path of it. It's not just straight up a Diablo clone, but it's very much in that realm, and it's very good. I'm excited for the sequel. And number 21 is Where Winds Meet, an open-world action RPG set in ancient China. You're a wandering hero in a historical fiction that will see us on a little jaunt through Chinese folklore. Got very fluid, acrobatic combat, a beautifully crafted world from everything we've seen currently. I'm pretty excited for this one. It's a different looking open world action RPG in at least enough ways where, I don't know, in some ways I think that the combat looks absolutely fun as hell, but it's got that beautiful kind of Ghost of Tsushima. But it's also got that beautiful kind of Ghost of Tsushima style sensibility to it. We don't have a release date, but I mean, it's wildly ambitious, and I'm certainly excited to see where it goes. We'll let you know as soon as we know more. And number 20 is Blight, Survival, an upcoming survival horror game set in medieval times. Not necessarily historically accurate medieval times. There's a deadly plague out. You're going to be out scavenging for resources, crafting weapons, etc., etc. Obviously, it's survival oriented, but I mean, it's medieval zombies. I told you it's not historically accurate. No release date yet, but it's definitely one I've got my eye very close on. At number 19 is Kingmakers, a game that I think, frankly, is a great idea. It's you traveling back in time to a sandbox action strategy, and you got modern weapons. And I guess modern vehicles as well. I mean, this is a totally crazy-looking game, and it's everything I could possibly want in the premise that has been given. Like, I can't wait to play this game. It's going to enter early access sometime later in the year. My eyes are so glued to this one. At number 18 is Light No Fire, Hello Games' follow-up to No Man's Sky. A lot of familiar elements here. You got a procedurally generated world. It is not multiple worlds. It's on one world allegedly the size of Earth. It's multiplayer from day one, and there's going to be a big focus on atmosphere and environmental storytelling. It's interesting because there's going to be manipulation of light and shadow in order to progress in terms of like revealing hidden paths and getting somewhere. I think it's going to be a pretty interesting puzzle-oriented, procedurally generated exploration game. I think Hello Games is on the right track. They obviously learned a lot with how No Man's Sky went, and I'm excited to play this one. They don't have a release date, but yeah, Light No Fire looks great. And number 17 is Clockwork Revolution. Hey, remember BioShock Infinite? Well, here's a game that looks like it continues a lot of the ideas that were there with your time travel, steampunk, Victorian, robot, nightmare, flipping out on all over the place. You got some baddie running a city, you got a fighter, you got to take her down, and all the retro futurism, technology, and potential for storytelling. It's all here. I can't wait to play this. I loved BioShock Infinite. Obviously, this isn't the people who made BioShock Infinite, but don't tell me that's not what they're aiming for here. No release date, but hell, it's going to be good. I think anyway. At number 16 is Unrecord, a tactical narrative first-person shooter that describes itself as a combination of Ready or Not, the tactical shooter, and this is where I think it starts getting very weird, Firewatch. See, the interesting thing about Firewatch is it's about what you can convince yourself is there when it isn't. And they've described this game as kind of similar to a detective novel or a thriller. And obviously, it's a first-person shooter with a body camera. It looks really realistic and very tense. I'm excited for it. There's no release date, but obviously, it's an exciting project. And number 15 is Little Devil Inside, an action-adventure RPG that has been a long time in the making. This game is one of those Kickstarters from 2015 that did incredibly well and raised way more money than it intended to, and ended up expanding its scope pretty significantly, and that has resulted in it being a much bigger project than originally intended. It's a very different looking game, very minimalist looking, set in a surreal open world environment with a lot of quests that are oriented around the mysteries of the world. Little Devil Inside, it doesn't have a release date yet. It's one of those games that's been in the works for so long, and it's such an interesting project. It's more worth just understanding that it probably will release this year and crossing your fingers. And number 14 is Homeworld 3, developed by Blackbird and published by Gearbox. Real-time strategy and space. I mean, that's what Homeworld is, and you got a whole lot more of it. It looks much bigger, much better, with big, epic battles, and it really looks like it takes advantage of modern hardware. This is a really pretty looking game. They've been working on it since 2017. They actually crowdfunded it, and it looks like it's going to land in your grubby little hands on May 13th, or the 10th with advanced access. And number 13 is Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2, a sequel to the 2004 game Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, developed by the Chinese Room, set in modern-day Seattle. I mean, in every way, it looks like they're attempting to follow up what we saw in the first game, except for modern and working completely. This was a quirky game when it came out, and a sequel to it now is a very interesting prospect. It's been 20 years. Sensibilities have changed. Technological possibilities have changed. This is a classic, and it'll be really interesting to see how it updates, how it holds up, what changes, to be specific. It is coming this year. We don't have an exact date, but stay tuned. And number 12 is the first Berserker Kazan, what it is calling itself a hardcore action RPG set in the universe of Dungeon and Fighter. It's a story of vengeance after being falsely accused of treason. The whole point is to reclaim Kazan's honor and glory. You got hack and slash combat, apparently a little more difficult than your typical hack and slash, and this anime art style that it has is very distinct. Obviously, we've seen a million games with a quote-unquote anime art style, but you immediately know that it's this game. Even if you don't know the name of it, it sticks out like a sore thumb. So I'm interested to play this one. It doesn't have a release date like so many of the games on this list, but it is coming in 2024. And number 11 is Banishers Ghosts of New Eden, an action RPG by Don't Nod, which is, of course, known for very different, kind of off-kilter games. It's a love story between a ghost hunter and his partner, who is now dead and therefore a ghost, who was a ghost hunter, now is, you know, on the other end of things. Basically, you're using the living guy's arsenal of attacks and the dead woman's spiritual powers to battle supernatural forces. It's a good game. It came out earlier in the month, and honestly, I thought pretty solid game. Steam reviews completely agree. Definitely worth the money. At number 10 is Tomb Raider 1-3 Remastered. Hey, you interested in the old Tomb Raider games? Do you want to see them not look brand new, but look a little bit better, still retaining a look that's very faithful to the original? If that's something that sounds good, then yeah, this is exactly what you want, because it's those games, warts and all. They do include a modern control method, which is decent, but given the way the game is made, can be a little troublesome. You can also switch between the new graphics and the completely old graphics at any time, which is really cool. It also includes a bunch of the expansion pack content from the original games. I think this was a hell of a lot of fun. I really enjoyed this remaster. Again, came out early in February. It's gotten a lot of very good press and feedback, and I think deservedly so. It's, I mean, exactly what it says it is. It is an old school ass remaster. At number 9 is Routine, a first-person sci-fi horror game set in a retro-futuristic lunar base. It's interesting. You end up looking like the bad guy to the bad guy being the robots, which, by the way, are super freaky and weird. They move strange. They look strange. Everything about this game is just super aesthetically, like, cool as hell. I am really excited to play this one. It doesn't have a release date, but yeah, I'm pretty sure this one's going to be a really good game. At number 8 is Once Human, a multiplayer open-world survival game set in a post-apocalyptic future. It's a really interesting-looking game. There's some freaky-looking stuff in it, but it also has a lot of, like, very standard survival game-looking stuff. And then you see these massive monsters or these floating, ghosty-looking enemies. Everything about it is crazy looking, and then you also see, like, hey, you can build a pretty normal looking house. Once Human looks honestly cool as hell. It looks like a good take on a survival game. It's coming out in the fall, and I'm definitely going to be paying close attention to it. At number 7 is Pal World, Ark Survival with guns and Pokemon. Multiplayer open world survival and crafting game. An extremely well-reviewed game that people really love the hell out of, and some people really hate for reasons that everybody else doesn't really care about at all. It's currently in early access. It's definitely worth your time, and they're continuing to work on it and expand on it. There's going to be new content in a couple months. I mean, this is a cool game, regardless of what a lot of people have said about it. They're definitely not the majority. There's 235,000 people that have reviewed it, and it is maintaining a 93% rating. So, well done to Pocket Pair on that game. Good job, guys. At number 6 is Avowed, an action RPG that looks a lot like a more action-y Skyrim. It takes place in the same world as Pillars of Eternity. It's interesting because it was originally going to be in the same way The Outer Worlds is kind of Obsidian's Fallout or Starfield or somewhere in between those. This is basically going to be that same thing with Skyrim. A smaller scope, but a much bigger focus on story. I think that's the right way to go. Obsidian, I have always maintained, is Bethesda without the bloat. And honestly, as much as I like what Bethesda does in terms of ambition, I generally like Obsidian's games better. They also made the best Fallout of all time, New Vegas. Avowed is going to be cool. It's an Unreal Engine 5 game. It's coming out Q3, Q4 this year, so look out for it. At number 5 is Black Myth Wukong, an action RPG based on Journey to the West. You're playing as Sun Wukong, the Monkey King. You're going to be battling a bunch of mythical creatures. And if you know the story of Journey to the West, you know basically what this is going to be. If you don't, it's a classic Chinese novel. It has to do a lot with Chinese history. It's kind of a fictionalization / interpretation of real events in China. It's a super interesting thing. It takes way too long to explain. I'm looking forward to this game. It looks real cool. It's coming out on August 20th, so look out for that. At number 4 is the Fable reboot, an upcoming action RPG developed by Playground Games. It's set in the Living Lands, part of the world of Eora. Players will assume control of an envoy of the Ader Empire, and you're going to investigate a mysterious plague. It's gonna be an interesting game because it's been a long time since Fable, and Fable is obviously no longer a Peter Molyneux thing. It's a Microsoft thing, and it'll be really interesting to see where they go with it. That's coming out in either fall or winter of this year. At number 3 is Pacific Drive, a supernatural survival game where you have to drive around in a station wagon and not die and all of the crazy crap happening. A lot of this game takes place driving, which I think is great because a lot of survival games have other mechanics but don't really focus on them. This is a big supernatural thing with storms that are life-threatening. You have to nurse your car back to health a whole bunch a lot of the time. It's a super interesting game and a great take on survival. Highly recommend it. Give it a shot. It's out now. And number 2 is Helldivers 2, a game that takes the original top-down shooter, puts it in third person, and amps everything up to 11. It looks like a worthy sequel of the original Helldivers, which came out way back in 2015. It's been a while, and I think this was the right direction to go with it. Helldivers 2 is a really cool game. Tons of people have been talking about it like crazy for a very good reason. It's just a really fun game. I would definitely say if the footage even looks even vaguely appealing to you, it's probably something you'll like. It does what it does really well. And finally, at number 1 is Dragon's Dogma 2. This is a game we have been talking about a long-ass time. The original came out way back in 2012. It wasn't really an instant hit, obviously. It sold all right, but it racked up a massive cult following over the years, and people are really excited for it to come back. Capcom said going back to it, the whole idea was basically to do stuff that was technologically not possible in the original, and also do all of this buggy stuff in the original not buggy. You can expect all of the good stuff from the original, including the combat system, and some expansions that look
Like, comment, and subscribe.